Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion on what do entrepreneurs do differently, organized by the Asian Institute of Business and Science School of Business. So without further ado, let me introduce our panelists for the day. So we have with us Mr. 𝗪𝗵𝘁𝗿𝗍𝗪. He's the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of 𝗪𝗵𝗁𝗃 Limited Singapore, 𝗪𝗵𝗁 Limited Sri Lanka, 𝗪𝗵𝗁 Infinitive Private Limited Sri Lanka. He's the Executive Director of 𝗪𝗵𝗁 ANZ Private Limited Australia, 𝗪𝗵𝗁 ROI LLC USA. He's also a non-executive and independent director for 𝗪𝗲𝗯𝗶𝗵 Holdings Limited Sri Lanka and 𝗪𝗫𝗁 Global Private Limited Sri Lanka. He's an award-winning innovator with an interest in innovation-driven business transformation, management, and economics, helping organizations achieve exponential performance and growth. He has over 22 years of global experience covering multiple industries, including banking and finance, FMCG, healthcare, leisure, logistics, enterprise systems, systems integration and technology consulting. And he has also helped organizations globally to transform their businesses with the adoption of technology in a meaningful manner. So welcome, Mr. 𝗪𝗵𝗁𝗃. And our second panelist for today is Ms. Khasuni Ratnasuriya. She is the Creative Director of 𝗑 LLC in New York and works on multidisciplinary creative projects as a product creator. He's a chartered marketer from Chartered Institute of Marketing, MBA from Postgraduate Institute of Management at University of 𝗕𝗂𝗪𝗂𝗪, Sri Lanka. And right after graduation from design school, she joined the apparel industry in Sri Lanka as a creative designer. And in 2011, she launched her own brand, 𝗑, with the intention of creating one-of-a-kind line of clothing. From the inception, she incorporated artisanal handmade lace to contemporary fashion. And she made a product which speaks of less impact to the planet and more impact to people and community. So welcome, Ms. Ratnasuriya. And we have Mr. Denzil Pereira with us, who will be the moderator for today's session. He's an MBA from Postgraduate Institute of Management again. His BSc Marketing Honors from the University of 𝗕𝗂𝗪𝗂𝗪, Postgraduate Diploma in Marketing from CIM. And he's a brand and business strategist and a consultant. He was a brand coach at the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing for Strategic Brand Management and a visiting lecturer for the University of Colombo, Kelaniya, 𝗕𝗂𝗪𝗂𝗪, again for strategic marketing, including private MBAs for 8 years. He has served in the fields of marketing, branding and sales at Sri Lanka Insurance, Union Assurance, Hema's Consumer Brands, Marina Foods, ACL Cables, and Haley's Group during his career of over 17 years. So welcome on board, Mr. Pereira. So I invite Mr. Denzil Pereira to carry this session forward and give our participants the knowledge about the entrepreneurship and what we need to do differently.
Okay, thank you, Samira. Thank you for your warm welcome, and let me welcome the two panelists again today, Dhanusha and Khasuni. And also let me mention about AIBS. I was invited to do just a one-way session, but instead that Shanti's invitation was to basically create it more interactive, so that we came up with this idea of doing something like this. And towards that end, I should also at the outset would like to thank Shehan for all the groundwork he has done in having us. So thank you very much for having us. And I'm really thankful to Dhanusha and Khasuni despite the heavy schedules. They are here because we believe that Sri Lanka can do much better. And as much as the people who have joined who are in this room can gain knowledge and ideas from these two experts, I'm sure there'll be many other ways that they can inspire at least few people to become entrepreneurs. which I guess is one of the high needs of this hour in our nation, because this is a nation that can overcome any struggle, any issue, and we have that in our blood. So I'm sure that this session will create some kind of a difference in the way you think and the way you feel and act. And I'm very, very, very honestly thankful to my two friends, 𝗪𝗁𝗻 and 𝗪𝗏. So to begin the session, I would like to do a little bit of introduction. If we have, especially if we have the undergraduates or maybe school leavers who are joining with us today to learn about entrepreneurship. The word itself is a bit difficult to pronounce, as you know, and as you can see, some people call it entrepreneur, some people call it entrepreneur. But if you want to get the right pronunciation, you can always go to internet and type it and see how it's pronounced. Mostly it goes as entrepreneur. So this word, the entrepreneur or entrepreneurship, is actually coming from a French word called entrepreneur, which means to say undertaker. So it's about undertaking a job. And what job do entrepreneurs undertake is that they are expected to be good at identifying some kind of opportunity which is just lying there, which an average person, layman, would not be able to figure or identify. So one of the key things that we expect to see in an entrepreneur is that they identify the opportunity and they quickly grab it. And as and when they grab it, the next thing which follows the same thought is that the risk factor. So they know that the moment they grab it, they know that they take a huge risk into their head. And along with that, the third thing happens, which is the determination, courage, and all the good things in the world that basically have in their system, in their blood, which keeps them going. So I think 𝗪𝗏 and 𝗪𝗁𝗻 would be the best to elaborate on this with their personal experience, how they have become what they are today, going through the same mentality, same psyche, and same thinking, which have made them to what they are today. So those who want to learn, those who want to get something new today, it's a bit of a difficult, heavy word to pronounce, but I think it's fair because that word has three things in it, as I see. As I told you, grabbing the opportunity or seeing the opportunity, and along with that, the very next thought is that, okay, whether I should take this risk or not, and they take it. And then the third one is more to do with action, which is about, the attitude of never giving up on it, and, pursuing it till you achieve what you want to achieve and go beyond that. So I consider one of the two things that entrepreneurs do. One is they create value. We always say that they take risks and they identify opportunity, but I see them as value creators. They create value for themselves and as well as value creators for the society. That's by and large, it's the employees that they employ in their businesses, so that they give an opportunity for people to work and earn and live, which is a real big thing. And then also they create value for themselves. So it's not something that everyone can do. And before this session, I was actually speaking to a couple of entrepreneurs, and some of them asked this question. Now, Denzel, don't you think that you are in a comfort zone where at the end of the month you get your salaries to your account, so that no matter whatever happens, it's going to come on your way, and it's not going to basically challenge you in the end, so that it's going to be quite easy for you at the end. And at the same time, what they were saying was that, okay, we don't have that comfort. So in a difficult situation like today, they would always try to see, okay, how am I going to pay salaries to my employees? And how am I going to continue with my work? For example, in the situation today in Sri Lanka, the fuel crisis, how do I find diesel to my vehicles? How do I find diesel to my the the generators, and how do I bring down raw material because there's a dollar crisis. So, some people are saying like Rizal, I'm wondering whether to shut down all these and, fly somewhere, go abroad, find my fortune there. So, it's a complex situation. It's a complex thing that they go through day in, day out, but they never give up. I think that's one of the key things that came out. And I think as a layman, if I analyze the situation, for example, why Sri Lanka is in this situation today is that I think we lack entrepreneurship. I think we don't have that right atmosphere, the right settings in this country to promote entrepreneurship. For example, in Sri Lanka, the people who are in the SME sector, which represent about more than 90% of the businesses in Sri Lanka, they don't have a way of sourcing their material, raw material, for example, packing material. So they take a risk and they come up with new product ideas and they develop, they manufacture, they produce. But having done all that, their profits are sometimes highly insignificant because they have been, I would say, ripped off by the suppliers of raw material and packaging material. Where Sri Lanka is a funny country where the middleman like them can keep a massive margin as against what the producer or the risk taker can create or can earn. So that again is coming from the fact that in 1978, when we opened up the economy, we didn't have proper policies in place, and as a result of that, most of the things that we could have done just going down the drain, and there is no way that we can get them back. For example, you have heard of this. The tractor was a concept created by a Sri Lankan, and our people didn't have the right atmosphere to embrace it, value it, appreciate it, so that he went and sold it to Japan. Today, a couple of days back, I saw an electric car being assembled in Sri Lanka, and people are talking really high of it. But back in 1975, one of the engineers, one of the professors at the University of 𝗪𝗏𝗪 produced the first electric car, but no one bothered about it. No one wanted to do anything about it. So if you come to the context that we live in today, 2 years, 3 years back, even before the pandemic, there were so many new concepts that people came up with, but there was no, I would say, a platform for them to, come and showcase it and find the necessary required support. So that that supporting setup is not here. So I'm not going to blame anyone. I'm not going to point fingers at anyone because it's our country and it's us. So and also another reason why I see entrepreneurship has not been so practiced in Sri Lanka is that with the open economy, we were made to believe in the fact that it's easy to bring down and sell them, making it here. The competitive advantage, and so-called things came into the picture, and then we thought, okay, we don't need to produce. I mean, obviously there are certain things that we need to bring down because it doesn't make sense for us to produce, but certain things we can make, we should make, we are not making it. So challenging the status quo, taking risks, and going out of your way and coming out of your comfort zone and thinking out of the box are the main things, the pillars of success for entrepreneurs, as I could see. So it's more like, I mean, if you take the two ends where you are comfortable being a employer or employee, where you get paid your salaries and your commitments are all met, versus the other end, where you're going to take a risk and you're going to do things. So I think both ends is like it's like a parabolic, like it's paradoxical, because in one end you have one thing and the other end you have the right opposite of polar opposite thing. So if you take, some people would say, okay, you are an employee and you are in your comfort zone, but at the same time someone might point the finger at an entrepreneur, would say, look, to crack this, you have done these things which are not ethical. For example, the tax games you play, the import levy games you play, are all there in the books, but nobody can read those. So these are the kind of things that would be interesting to discuss, and we also welcome questions from the participants, the audience. You can throw your questions at us, and towards the end of the session, we'll take selected questions and we'll try to answer as well. It's quite a lengthy session that's going to be. So without taking much time, I would like to, I spoke to many people, but I just thought I would share this. Very humble lady who has started business of selling baby shoes. She says, started the business 9 years back, just 2 online shops were there. So did a small market study and started selling baby shoes online. Reinvested the profit to the business for 2 years without taking any profits. Found different shipping methods such as cash on delivery and local postal services, and using parcel post facility locally. It's easy for the customers, instead of going to 10 to 12 shops to match colors and etc. designs. One of the best practices we did was to satisfy customers by taking back returns if they have any problem. So you can see in the last line, you see she has mentioned what she did differently. So I think the topic today is what entrepreneurs do differently. While discussing all these other things, we are going to give a massive focus on the fact that, okay, what do they do differently? Why are they so unique? Why are they so different to other people? So we have 2 unique people with us. One is Dhanush, as introduced by our good friend, and also we have Kasuni joining with us from New York. So welcoming again the 2 of you to the session, and let me first turn to Kasuni. Kasuni was in the ready-made garment industry. She was a fashion designer, creative thinker. She had creative instincts, but she was in MBA batch. She was my batchmate. I'm very proud to say that today, or even back then. She left this country in 2014. That was a decision that probably even I wouldn't have taken at that point of time. So she took it. So she had some, I don't know, that audacity to take that decision. Where it came from, I don't know. But one thing I remember was that when I was doing my case study for the MBA, my case study was on Odell, and I used to walk around these shelves and aisles, and I found the brand KUR. And I was wondering, whose brand is this? And then I got to know that it's our very own batchmate. And I was very happily mentioning that in my thesis also. And then in no time, I could realize that, okay, she has gone a long way from here, finding her fortune. I think that's what she did differently. I would call it co-petition. As I remember, I coined a word for that, co-petition. Co-petition as in you compete while cooperating. You're cooperating with Odell, and you compete with Odell at the same time. So your products are housed inside Odell, but you are a new brand. And I think Otara was doing that for many other brands in similar way. So Kasuni, without taking much time, would you like to enlighten us through a few things that you did differently, and also your journey so far? Maybe with few highlights to begin with.
Okay, thank you then, sir, for the introduction, and also thank you AIBS team for having us. Okay, so answer to your question, I think what did I do differently was definitely that I always emphasize on the value over volume, or in other words, quality over quantity. So that was one of the things that I did from the beginning. So with my background of the product creation, or the design background, that I always wanted to create something tangible. And in 2011, I could remember in Sri Lanka, 2010, 2011, that if you look at the domestic fashion industry, I could remember there were so many evening wear designers or bridal wear designers. But at that time, I was thinking of, how many bridals, or like how many evening wear pieces a person would require? Only very few, right? But then what if I look at the ready-to-wear or more casual, more utilitarian or active wear, that many of us would at least purchase 1 or 2 pieces per month, at least. So even at that point, I mean, I didn't have this much of knowledge and the exposure at that point, but then I decided that I'm going to design more ready-to-wear. So that's how I started. I could remember even a couple of lectures at the arts design school, and they were saying, oh, okay, that's really interesting. That's really smart. This was like this was actually like 2005 and 7. I haven't even started working in the industry. About this whole idea of the value creation, something really paying off even right now, that when I started working with Sri Lankan craft, that bobbin lace and beetle lace incorporated products. And I could remember I was also writing a thesis there was this team, the assignment we had to do. I could remember some of the students were asking, are you sure you can price this product at this? And I was very confident to say, yes, I can, because, this tourism will pick up and we experience sort of things. And it's really started working one by one. So that's the thing. At that time, even though I didn't know that, the war will come to an end, and then the tourism will pick up, and there's so many things that we went through. And it's actually, it is paying a price and creating a product which has a value, and kind of, you can call it something in the higher end market. It's always a risk, because everyone wants to go with the flow, kind of, create something more for the mass market. But it's a kind of a challenge that I took. And even right now, I think that's the best decision that I made, that always emphasizing the value over volume and quality first, and to make things very relatable. The fashion, if you take fashion today, we all love fashion. We are all fashion, no matter what you wear, what you do, doesn't matter. Because fashion is the culture. It's a combination of multiple subcultures. That could be arts, music, cinema, photography, anything. But then this whole idea of fashion is kind of, it's combined together. Whatever the changes are happening to our lifestyle, it's kind of impacting how we dress, how we eat, and everything. Look what things that we go through today in Sri Lanka, and still we dress in a way, we find a way. And the pandemic is the best example, that we never thought that we will have to wear a mask, but that became a very important piece in our life. So still we wear masks here and there. Things become more important with the changes happening to our environment and lifestyle. So the most important thing is that to make things more relatable. The times are different. Today, in any industry, we talk about sustainability, and we have to concern about the people and planet factor. So whatever we do today, it has to be very futuristic. Anything you want to start, anything you want to go. So that's perhaps the difference I created without even knowing, that it will come to this stage.
Sorry, yeah. Okay, so while listening to you, I took down a few points. So I'm going to ask a few questions to, probe a bit into certain things. First thing you said was your price. People are asking how you would price this, because it's going to be, was it the fact that it's going to be with a massive markup, or is it the cost factor, or both?
Well, it's the cost factor, and also it's not for the mass market, because I've decided that I can only produce certain amount of products, but then that has to cover, overheads. And then I had to decide, if we are creating few products, that margin should be in a certain way, because it's an exclusive and a unique product. And we are catering to a customer who's exclusive, as well as kind of a niche market.
So I'm sure you're talking about designer wear.
Yeah.
And if you take the price factor, now there is no, rule of thumb for you to follow. in pricing these. So probably your margin or markup could be 700% or 1000%. But there's only one unit, one piece that you make of that design, and after that, it's not to be made again. So whoever was going to buy that is going to be a proud owner of that. Now, you said you're futuristic in your approach. Why do you say you're futuristic?
Well, whatever we design today or we create today, it's for tomorrow. You know, if you are creating anything, even in the industry, usually if you take the apparel exports industry or like the retail sector in US and Europe that we are producing in Sri Lanka, if you ask from anyone right now, they are preparing things for 6 months ahead of time because with the seasons and etc. So if we are not creating something for tomorrow, with what is happening right now in the world and in the industry, you know, we have access to everything. Data is everything. Basically, data is the most important thing right now. We have so many information. And as in relevant to my industry, if we take trends, now everyone like trends, everyone want to be trendy, but the trends have become very shortened over the years because you have access, you have social media, you have so many other ways of looking at things. Before even something comes to the market and become trendier, it's gone. So we call it like fads. So absolutely, there's no time for us to, you know, wait and emphasis on things that how much important those things will be, because important the thing is that everything is out there before even we think about it. Everyone wants everything fast, and I'm not really supporting the fast fashion itself. You know, there are two things happening at the same time. It's very interesting. Like there's fast fashion going on because of the profits and etc. And also the other side that we are looking at so many more movements coming up, like sustainability and the environment crisis and things like that. So then we had to find the proper match, and things are overlapping with each other. So futuristic in the sense, it's like, it's not just creating something for the future. I think it's about creating something for the time. Whatever we create today, it has to be relatable for the time. And let's say if you want to take something from the past, which is perfectly fine, but how can you preserve anything if you cannot make it relatable? So if it's a craft, or if it could be an art form, it could be an old music or cinema or anything, we had to really bring it to the contemporary platform.
Okay. So you were talking of fast fashion, which was the the trend in the world, and we were excited about it. We used to be excited about it, but in the recent history, we could see that the new trends are like slow fashion, and we were talking of minimalism and upcycling. So that's coming up, really fast, and the fashion designers are also attuned to it now, and they are trying to work in that line, probably keeping the same price levels, but changing the game plan. So one of the other things I wanted to ask from you is that you depend on artisans. You said you work with artisans. One of the challenges for local entrepreneurs like you, who would come up with brands, branded clothing, even though it's designer wear, it's branded, is to maintain the quality levels, because when you work with artisans, it's difficult for you to maintain your quality levels, quality standards. How did you overcome that struggle and that obstacle? What different methods you used?
Quality is a challenge for anyone, especially the consistency of the quality it's a challenge. If you even speak to a Tesla, company of Tesla, or Ford, or talk to even apparel exports industry right now, those challenges are there. So the most important thing is the continuation of continue to check on your quality, the continuation of maintaining the quality. That especially working with artisans, they are creative people, and for them it's about creating their craft, and they don't think about anything else. It's just for them, it's about their perfecting their craft. But then if you take that craft out of it, creating something different, end product would be totally different. It's like 1 + 1 = 3 kind of a situation. So the most important thing is that you need to have a team, you need to have this continuous inspecting of the quality. There's no way we can let it go. At any point of your work, the quality is very important. Like just think about a bakery, you cannot produce fresh goodies for a couple of months and then say, okay, I'm gonna let it go. That's not the way to go forward. So it's the same scenario.
Yeah. So, coming back to the point where you're talking of sustainability now, the ready-made garment industry sector, the fashion and all that put in together is accused of polluting water pollution, etc. And in the one hand, and on the other hand, you have, for example, the cotton prices in the world has hit the ceiling and it's double. The current rate is the highest ever in the world market that you have ever seen in the world. So how do you, thinking of sustainability and thinking of bringing it to a sustainable platform when you are basically trying to, strike a balance between these two ends where you have two struggles?
Well, the sustainability has to be the way of life right now. It's not just a buzzword, but earlier it's just, just a word. So it has to be a way of life in the sense like this is not something that you have to do additionally. It has to be part of the process, part of your organization, part of your small business. You have to think about it. And I'm very excited about the new generation, especially the Gen Z and the young millennials, that there are movements happening in the world, that climate change movement, and rest of the movements like women's rights, LGBTQ rights, or Black Lives Matter, which is about equality, and with all those things that people are aware of these things. So there's no way that you can let it go. If you don't have the emphasis towards people and planet in your work that you do, I don't think you can move forward, because that is like the most important thing, and it has to be the core establishment of any business. It could be a hospitality industry, whether you want to open a small bakery, small coffee shop, or like the fashion industry, anything we do. And fashion industry is known to be one of the most polluted industries, which is true. And that's why most of the players are now taking actions that we can do things better. It's not like overnight we can fix things. If you have a factory and tomorrow you cannot go and just eliminate process, the processes are important, because the process means there's an involvement of people. So you cannot just eliminate a process overnight. So it's like how to do things better. And to the very simple answer to your question, that I work with something very organic, and I try to use organic material, organic cotton, and we all know cotton is a very water hungry industry, so there's no way we can get away of it, and there are alternatives where we can use synthetic. And then again, if we use synthetic, that there's another challenge of degradable and how to recover those. And there are other things happening right now with the there are so many things happening right now globally. There's a war in Europe, and there's gas prices are high in US, and the US is going through inflation, and all of us are in the global post-pandemic recovery stage. And then Sri Lanka, we are in another totally different crisis. So there are challenges. We will have these challenges, but the important thing is this co-establishment. Just because there's something happening, we cannot just let it go. Our core values of sustainability or protecting the environment. Things can start in a very small way. You can incorporate organic or sustainable raw material. From the beginning, you can think about it. And the distance that your product travels, your raw material travels, that you can think about it when you want to start something, especially in creating products. You need raw material, you need expertise. So those are the little things that you have to think when you are going to establish something.
Nice. Okay, now that's where you are today. And the next thing that I'm going to ask to end this segment is that, you had to make this choice of leaving your well-paid job and going to an unknown territory, doing something totally maybe new or maybe familiar, but in a different setup. that would have been a real big decision for you. So as an entrepreneur, how did you go about, or how did you go about that decision? Reaching, or thinking to yourself, how, that would have been interesting, right? So I would just like to know, I mean, for the benefit of the audience also, how did you take that decision? It's a bold decision that you had to take.
Well, yes, leaving a job means beginning of something different, right? So it's always a beginning of something. I know that sounds very different for us, especially from in our context in South Asia, like leaving a job or, you're getting fired. I mean, I didn't get fired, but, just it's like such a taboo. Oh my, wow, I'm going to leave the job. But one of the things that I've realized in this part of the world that I have seen so many people are leaving jobs, and it's so funny that people will tell you that, oh, congratulations, you are leaving a job. That's the attitude that we have in the developed part of the world. I know that people are leaving the Wall Street jobs and going to start some coffee shop or cafe, and still they do fundraising that they are going to get some experiences as a barista or something. You never think about it, leaving some, 6 digits, some per annum job role and going to start something. I think it's always starting something different. It's not an end of anything. And also, if you think about the sportsmen, that they leave at the right time, they usually leave at the peak time. They know when to leave, like Kobe Bryant of basketball, his retirement. And in some of the cricketers that we have in Sri Lanka, we had that they left at a certain time. They knew, okay, so this is it, and I'm leaving. Except the politicians, I think they don't leave jobs, right? They, in any part of the world. But other than that, leaving at the right time, it means like, that there's something ahead of you, that you are going to start something. So that was my decision, that I worked in the apparel exports industry for 14 years. And so I've decided it's quite challenging, because I know that, I have to do everything from the scratch, from the beginning, and it's going to be new leap, new phase. And also people could question and, is this the right time? And if this is the worst time that so many things are happening, anything above, little above is going to be good. So I think this is the best time. So that's how I saw it.
Okay. Thanks, Rosmi. Thank you. Thank you for opening remarks. Now, let's see where Dhanushi is. He's not to be found. Dhanushi, now, you are coming from the other end of the industries segment, which is basically the intangibles. Now, Kasuni is very much in the tangible sector. It's very tangible, eye-catchy, but your sector is not so visible. We call it a service. And service marketing, service branding, entrepreneurship in services, it could be challenging, it could be difficult. And we've heard of Silicon Valley to various other things, and startups. So these are common words buzzwords we hear in the industry of IT. I met you first back in time at 𝗪𝗵𝘁. And you were a part of it, and I was part of 𝗪𝗵𝘁 group. So ever since then, that you progress so fast and you become an entrepreneur. How do you look at your journey back, and what are the highlights that you would like to share with us? From being an employee to being an entrepreneur.
Oh, good question, Denzel, and thank you very much. Thank you, 𝗪𝗵𝘁, also for the opportunity. Yes, so when we first met, I was doing a corporate job. So, and I've been doing it for, I think, 19 years, right? I just did the math when Kasuni was saying, like, when she left. I then realized work for a corporates, various types of corporates, right? For 19 years. And I think what really helped me to become an entrepreneur, I would take two things, right, out of that whole thing. One is what I did while I was doing my corporate job, what kind of work I did, and the kind of attitude I had towards work or my role. So I was never someone who waited till someone, one of my superiors, come and tell me, "Hi, Dhanushka, can you get this thing done?" So I never waited till someone comes and tells me that this is what they want. Of course, I did something like that when I really, started my career. I used to go and, fix, look at bugs, fix them, I come from IT industry, right? So first we get into more support kind of roles before we get into hardcore development engineering stuff. So first they get us to eat the kind of the dog food, right? So, and then gets our hands dirty, and then they can use our experience and knowledge to do, build things. Before that, you need to do support. If I look back, my 19 years of corporate career, I've done a lot of projects, right? Many have been successful. There are failed projects, right? And if you also look back and say, like, what were those projects? And I would say most of those projects are initiated by myself. There are many times that I, come up with a plan, a strategy, and of course, sometimes I have to go in front of a board and convince the board why they should invest in this. Right? Most of them are technical projects, but of course, it had a business impact. Otherwise, no corporate would invest. Right? And also, I've been continuously playing this role, right, of a problem solver. So whenever you see a problem and you would want to come up with a solution, right? So, and that really helped me realize that one day, my last job was with, I think, London Stock Exchange Group. So I was thinking, can I do this in a more of a broader manner? Can I do this as a business, right? So if you're good at solving problems, how can leverage that, and also probably make it a business so that you can involve a lot of people and you can do it the way you want. And by that time, you also saw problems in existing ecosystem that you actually want to create something with a point of differentiation, the technical word, exact technical word that Professor 𝗘𝘁𝗧𝗍𝗍 used to teach us. So how we create those different points of differentiations, or the PODs, and then create something that would look more lucrative, more attractive in the marketplace, right? And the same conversation of whether you have the capacity or the resources to take up what kind of a volume, right? The same thing Kasumi also mentioned. I chose quality over volume, right? And that could also a way that we could differentiate ourselves. Even to date, if you look at what we do, we also still consider ourselves as a boutique tech consultancy, even though we have about now almost closer to 90 people globally. But still, if you are compared to a lot of bigger players, we are smaller. But still, what we're trying to do is maintain that consistency in terms of quality in the delivery and the way we solve problems, and the level of productivity that we create as an outcome of our engagements. So people talk good about it. People also, we have clients who are actually referring us to another client. And that is a very unique place to be in when it comes to the kind of work that we do, involving a lot of thinking, cognitive capabilities of educated people. It's not an easy task, right? So, and the first thing was that. Second thing is actually the education that I got myself exposed to when it comes to entrepreneurship. Because end of the day, you can dream about things, you can think about things, you can think what you're going to do, but you need a little push, right? You need some, that little push. It can come within, it can come from someone, it can come from a friend, right? So in my conversation, it came within, but I also had someone whom I've been talking to, right? My dilemma was, is this the time to do that? That's the dilemma that everybody would go through, right? You have a great idea, it's the right time to do it, but is this the time? So we would, contemplate, we would procrastinate, these are, normal, usual things that all of us would face. Once you, and also, especially when you are doing a good corporate job, when you achieved and you become complacent, right? And that's another thing that you need to handle. So experience in terms of how I worked inside corporates and created and captured, I use these two terms, I'll explain it later, Denzel. creating and capturing value are two different, right? And how you do value creation and value capturing, right? And you go through the cycle, right? And then, of course, the day you decide to become an entrepreneur, when are you taking that decision, right? And having that guts to do that, right? Like Khas left the job, right? Or left Sri Lanka, right? And like me left 𝗪𝗪𝗃, right? It's like, so these are the two things I would when I look back at my career. These are the two things that I see that the two decisions that I took, or the two things that I facilitated or helped me to do what I do today.
So interesting thing that I picked from your brief intro is that you started something while working, and you didn't have to take a drastic difference in your way of doing things, because in Kasuni's case, I'm just comparing the example that we have here, where she had to fly over to New York to start the whole thing, and it's altogether a different setup, but you were lucky enough to start it here. So how was the supporting the infrastructure that worked in your way? In her case, sole entrepreneur, but in your case, you have a right hand, you're probably a partner, and there are pros and cons again. I mean, your own thing, it's you, and okay, whatever the decision that you take, the consequences are going to be with you. But when you're having a partnership sort of a thing with another entrepreneur, it's going to be difficult, because there are times that you can't look eye to eye. So how do you explain that? And also, for the benefit of the audience, it will be interesting for them to know what exactly you offer to the market, because I have gone through extensive presentation of your team, because in one of the places that I used to work, I asked the team to come and make a presentation, because I was keen to see whether I could implement it in our setup. But I'm sure this audience would like to know what you offer to the market.
Okay, so I handle this.
Double barrel question, sorry.
Yeah, so two questions, right? First thing, Denzel, so I'll correct you. I didn't start anything while I was working. So what I started was completely different to what I was doing.
Okay.
Right? So now, if you look at what kind of roles I have played, I've been the CIO, I've been an architect, I've done different roles, right? Locally, globally, and my biggest exposure was my time with at Microsoft. So I used to work for Microsoft, and I saw how a lot of tech stuff being done, and how people talk about technology, and also I was also part of some of the early tech projects, in terms of rollouts and all that. So these little exposures were very important, and these opportunities that you get, you need to maximize. So something that I did was that every opportunity that came on my way, I make use of it. I created value and captured value. I created value for them, and I created value for myself, right? So it's a win-win. And the only thing that I took from my 19 years of career before I started this was that whole idea of how do you want to solve more enterprise problems, right? And different way. And if you really look at the kind of work that we do in my current setup, is not very common, or was not very common 5 years back. Some of the things that we brought in, right? When you talk about especially robotics, right? A topic that we really excel in. When we first introduced robotics to this market, no one else was doing robotics, as a mainstream business, right? So software robotics is a hot topic globally. Right now, we've gone beyond that. We've gone into intelligent automation, right? So if you look at, there are bigger names who are still following us. They are like, look at where we are going. So and that's what we did, right? So I created something that wasn't available at that time in this ecosystem. Of course, there were then followers. So then you need to keep that momentum of creativity to still maintain that gap between you and your competition. Otherwise, you're slowly getting yourself dragged away into a more of a red ocean conversation than you creating your own creative spot. That's challenging. We'll talk about it later, right? So that's one thing that I did. And then your second question was, how do you want me to handle the second question, right? So then,
okay, maybe compare it with other countries. I don't know.
Okay, so now basically what we are doing, right? So when you have an idea, when you start a company, right? So whether you want to do it alone, whether you want to, start with a partner, and what does that tell you, right? Now, especially there are two things. Now, in my case, what I had was an idea, right? And it's different to probably what 𝗪𝗁 does, right? It's because I wanted to have more people participating when we start, right? So because even though you have a creative idea, you need more people into this, because solving a problem involves a project, and you need to source consultants, you need to source people in-house, right? So and so I can't do it by myself. Say, for example, I go and tell a client that I can solve this problem, and it requires 10 people of different types and different caliber, different backgrounds, like also into business and technology. But I need to have that team, because I can't be sourcing the team when I get a project, right? So I had to set up a little team, and there were few things that you had to do parallelly when it comes to setting up a tech consultancy, right? And you need to keep an eye on terms of, because it's services sector, right? So it's different to what 𝗪𝗁 does, right? So now it's all about people, right? And so I was thinking, what should I do, right? So I had a few friends who were talking about it, and also I looked at, of course, use tools, porters, fire forces, do all that, because you take all, because we just came out of the university in terms of this master's program, so you tend to also apply a lot of things to justify whether it's time to do this, whether it's the right environment, or what's missing. So in that, I realized that to set up what I want to set up, I can't do it alone. I may have the best idea of starting of something, but I wanted one or two, right? At least other people to do that, right? So this is what happened. So so then my job was to find someone, right? So I was like, talking to, some of the people, friends, network, and then came across my business partner, 𝗪𝗵𝘁. Right? So I met him, and he was also doing a corporate job, in business consulting, right? So we decided, fine, we need to do something. So we met, right, while we were, after work, and, discussed this, and we said, fine, we should leave jobs. So what we both first did was, like, we agreed that we are going to do this, and we informed both the employers that we're leaving, and we gave them notice, right? And then also we told what we're going to do, right? So we're going to start up something new, and don't worry, we are not competing with whatever you do. It was very upfront and very clear. So then we were, setting this up, investments and all that. So to date, I'm happy to tell you that me and my business partner, we've never come to situations where that we could not agree on something, right? And that is very important, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck when it comes to having collaborations with partners, and I've seen a lot of partnerships fail because of these disagreements, right? So, and also in certain ways, you also need to bring in empathy and emotional intelligence also in these conversations. And then why I'm sharing these words is very important. You need to have good level of emotional intelligence. You also need to be empathetic, right? Sometimes you should be able to see what the other person's perspective about the same problem, and also understand why they say that. What's the background, right? And then you also should be able to negotiate. And negotiation is another skill, right? So you need to discuss, like, this is why I say it's suitable, it's time, and this is why I say it's not the time to do this, because these conversations are commonplace in any partnership, right? So but if you agree on a fundamental way of operating, right, and something that you could have is actually a business partner agreement, right? So you can actually have an agreement if you really want to put something up, right? What we have is an understanding, right? So you can set up that this is the way that we are going to work, right? And if something comes to a kind of a dead end, right, what we're going to do is that you probably seek help from someone, and these terms we need to understand and agree before you get into marriage with a business partner. Because once you build a company, because if you're an entrepreneur, you have dreams, you put in a lot of effort, you sacrifice a lot of things, right? Your time, family time, and you can't put that at risk. So it's very important for you to be proactive in terms of how you're going to safeguard this business in the future, right? How you're going to continue the growth and what happens. So even with my business partner, I have that understanding and agreement. And in terms of what happens if we come to a disagreement on something, who will get preference, and we have that understanding, right? So because of that, touch wood, so far I have never faced a situation where, since we have also expanded, right? So even though we started in Sri Lanka, we are in Singapore, we're in Australia. I mean, we're talking about properly established businesses, not for namesake. These are businesses which are operating and, profit-making entities, what I'm talking about, right? And they're operational and they're tax paying in those countries, right? So it's not just so, and we have more directors, more partners also, because the global network, also something that I want to talk about later, if we have time, as an entrepreneur, how you expand your reach, how you access markets, right? We also have, because culturally we think you need to own everything, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? So if you look at our partnership with our Australian entity, it's a JV, it's a 50-50 JV, right? So we have an Australian partner, we have us in Sri Lanka, and we take decisions together, and we have a way of operating, right? So people might think, now when we take profits, we have to share part of that. That's exactly the psyche, the mentality sometimes, a lot of people have, right? I'm being very honest and upfront and brutally honest here. And if you think like that, you will never have access to that market. You would earn nothing, right? So you can have everything of nothing, right? And either you can have something of everything, right? So it's basically how you want to see how your business is growing. And anywhere a human is involved, of course, the conversation will always become political, right? Because human is a political animal, right? So what we need to do is we need to bring that consciousness, we need to bring that intelligence, we need to bring that empathy into conversation, understand why someone say what they say, and also see how we would address that problem, right? So I hope I answered that question, both questions, Dennis. You're muted.
Denzel, you are muted.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to tell Dhanusha, I know I'm taking a little bit more time on this section, but I need to ask this at this point of time. When it comes to software development, India, volume-wise, capability-wise, seem to be far ahead of us. But I think overall, now, for example, when I first interacted with the IBS a couple of years back, I met the lady, Iron Lady behind 𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗃, Lakshmi, and that product, that concept is something unique and new, where if your board meetings could easily be handled, organized with the 𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗃 product, which is a product from Sri Lanka. I was surprised to see that it had gone to reach out to so many countries in the world. So likewise, your product, Dhanusha, is also a unique product where you're giving A to Z comprehensive, control over most of the functions. Now, this is something that I've heard of. I've heard this, that even though Indian companies can develop softwares, they are better at it, there is some kind of a quality factor that they cannot beat us, and we are ahead of them. Do you agree with that? Have you also seen that thing in what you do, and have you made use of it?
Tough one. So basically, India has some of the greatest minds in the world, right? So I think it's kind of a stereotyping that that's being done probably because of some of the experiences that some people have had, right? But trust me, even my time at Microsoft, when I was at Microsoft, I think still Satya Nadella was there as one of the program directors, and who's the CEO today, right? And if you take Google CEO to all that, so, but even in US, most of the senior product team members of some of the bigger products that we have, are actually Indians. So it's not that they're better or we are better, but we don't have the volumes that they have, right? So I'll take a number that I don't know whether you will agree. Indian university output per year is 20 million, which is equal to our population, right? So that's the number of graduates they make every year, right? So they're large. And out of that, you always put them in a bell curve. You have the greatest minds, and you have the average guys, and you have of course everybody has dummies, right? So that's true, right? So, and what happens is most of these tech companies hire that cream, right? They are the brains behind most of the products that they come up with. And the rest of even in Sri Lankan markets is the same, right? So in the rest of the team members get divided into different consulting and other engagements. If you take the Sri Lankan context, it's the same. Now, if you look at products that Sri Lankans have built, right? If you take the Millennium Exchange, the stock exchange system, which London Stock Exchange runs, Johannesburg runs, about 16 plus. When I left, it was about 16 plus exchanges around the world running that system, completely built by Sri Lankans. Right, and it has the lowest latency when it comes to transaction turnaround times, right, in the world, fastest, right? Sri Lankan engineering. And if you take 𝗪𝗲𝗂, one of the leaders in enterprise integration, 𝗪𝗲𝗂, right? Open banking platforms, 𝗪𝗲𝗂, right? We have so many products, that Sri Lanka has built, and engineers have, we have a name because I think it's our education system and also our literacy and all that, and our way of handling English as a language. A lot of consultants that go to Sri Lanka. And if you take SEMA, next to, I think, UK, Sri Lanka is the biggest, contributes the largest contributor in terms of SEMA qualifications, right, globally. And these are quality resources that come out of our ecosystem. And that's why we have a name, because the probability of a Sri Lankan doing it right is higher, because of course our volume number is low and our quality is also higher, right? So of course then the probability is high. So your experience may be good, and probably that's what's leading to this whole stereotype conversation in terms of fine, we're better. But I think every country has good people, but in terms of our quality, I think we are still ahead compared to our volumes, right? So I think that's what we are talking about.
This is the point I wanted to get at. Now, at the beginning you said, okay, we're equal or they are better, but now you ended up admitting the fact that I'll tell you why I said that, because what I have heard of, I'm not an IT expert, my background is marketing, branding. What I've heard is that when there are bugs and when you have to go through the source codes, it's easier for people to go through our source codes and find where the bugs are and then correct them than going through on average, stereotyping. So I think that's the edge we have. So we'll talk about it further now. Kasuni has been there listening to us almost half an hour. So let's see whether she's up and she's just maybe have fallen asleep. Yeah. So Kasuni, I asked what you did differently. I would like to know the most important 5 things you did at that point of time when you started your business as an entrepreneur and setting up your brand, etc. And out of those 5 things, which were the ones which actually gave you results? Would you like to talk about it? I hope I'm not, probing into your maybe your sensitive information about your business, but would you like to talk about it? The 5 main things that you did, thinking that, okay, I'm going to make it happen, I'm going to make it work, no matter what. And out of those 5 things, all 5 things would have given you results, or maybe 3 things would have given you results. I don't know. So, yeah, how would you like to talk about it?
Well, Denzel, I think what works well is definitely the idea of emphasizing the quality over quantity. Definitely that worked well. That worked out well. And also like justifying your market. I didn't know whether I would have a customer, but then I knew if I create a product for a gap in the market, I can create that customer. And I think that also worked out well, so that perhaps the understanding of the market and the product and your customer, that worked well. And then again, creating a niche, unique product. You have to always create something unique. You don't have to always go with the flow. That uniqueness is very important. It's not ideally the differentiation, but it could be something unique. That's the most important thing in the product creation. We see so many similar products. Now you go to buy anything, you see so many different things in the market. But then what makes that product unique? It could be very simple thing. It could be even a packaging. It could be the durability, or it could be anything. And those are the three main focuses, and it really worked out well. And to be very honest with all of you guys, that there's nothing like that I have to say that this I did this but it didn't work, because the thing is, there were failures, there are failures, there will be failures, and I knew that from the beginning. And I wasn't really scared of failures. I was scared of not doing anything, kind of. I think that was one of the qualities with most of the people that we call entrepreneurs or businessmen or whoever, the creators. Most of the people are scared of failures and rejections. I really wanted to fail, because that was the learning, that the rejections are obvious. You cannot build anything, you cannot create anything if you don't accept rejections and failures. Even at the art schools, that in the school classroom, that there are constructive criticisms. Those are very important. And I have seen some of the kids that they cannot accept those constructive criticisms from the lectures. They get very offensive. And I don't think they will be really good in the industry. No, you have to accept, when you create something, you should know 50 people will like and 50 people may not like. And that is also the other way of looking at, maybe I explained the 5 points, and you asked what didn't work. And let me put it like this way. I haven't really cracked the code. The breakthrough idea, I haven't really cracked that. I'm really working on that. I'm still working on that. Yeah. So we'll see.
We wish you all the best with your idea that you're trying to crack. Yeah, good. But okay, let me ask it like this in a different way. Is there anything that you wish you did not do so far in the journey?
So far, no, Dennis, I don't think. That's why I said there's a breakthrough idea that I'm working on. And I have no regrets in anything I did.
No regrets. Wonderful. Okay, so
yeah, all the failures means that I'm ready for a hell of a future. That's how you have to say it. Failures or rejections.
Okay. And Khasuni, now your background, I was listening to the introduction of yours, and you're a qualified chartered marketer. And then you learned also, you are also a creative thinker, and also you learned textile, technology, etc. How did you find the blend of these three? Or how did you really think that, how did you figure that, okay, I need to create my own brand? Where did you get that from?
That's quite interesting. I don't think myself as an entrepreneur even right now. I don't think if it's something that you have to label yourself. It's definitely that you have to have a heart to do anything in life. It could be sport, or creating a business, or building a house, or it could be anything. So I think that passion is just, I felt like I was a market analyst when I initially joined Brandix. I was with Brandix for 14 years. And then, it's very interesting. When I went to the interview, I had all these qualifications you mentioned, and they looked at everything and said, what, designing is very small. That was 2000, closer to 8, 9. The US was going through the recession, the first recession. So they convinced me, don't become a designer, and especially in Sri Lanka, come join as a market analyst, like that. So I joined as a market analyst, and a lot of data, numbers, and after 6 months, I knew it's kind of boring. I'm like, I needed more work, kind of. So the pivot tables and this and that. But then again, I learned so much, because I could remember as a market analyst at 2009. I go home and come back. I see so many layoffs. I see so many store closures in the retail sector. And I started learning, okay, this is what is happening in the market. And I got to know about US and EU and the market, the financial aspects of it, how the investors are reacting, these big 𝗕𝗵𝘁𝗁𝗍s were closing down, sending people home, things like that. So I got that knowledge. And then one day I thought, okay, let me go and, just start something my own. I want something tangible to create. So I think I was at a shower when I came up with the idea of 𝗘, creating the 𝗘 product. So it's such a random thing. And I built that brand. And even at that point, I was thinking of, okay, let's make it less is more, minimal, simple brand logo, black and white. I didn't have to change anything. These were just random thinking some long time ago. But then again, thanks to the knowledge and the learning I had, all thanks to my marketing knowledge. And at the same time, I started 𝗪𝗵𝘁𝗵𝗁. So the academics are really good. But one of the things I would say in Sri Lanka, we have this mindset of collecting academic qualification. Now we don't stop. If we have a social degree, then you go for MBA, then you want a PhD. We are so eager for that. One of the things that I've realized in this part of the world, if people are good at one thing, they are only good at that. They don't go and collect academics or license. I think maybe it's like such an South Asian or like developing part of mindset. We don't need so much of academics. And if you are passionate on one thing, I think that's something you have to focus and move forward.
So I think you brought the discussion back to the point where we started. What do they do differently? So that's what you do differently, because your forte is this, and then you don't need to gather so many 3-letter extensions to your name, because you know what you're doing. So I think knowing what you do and knowing that you're giving your 1000% to it is important to be successful in this journey. Well, you also talk about try fast, fail fast approach. Was it something that you figured on your own, or is something that you learned from somewhere, maybe at the places where you worked before, or how?
Well, I think it's a kind of a gut feeling also. Some people are, as I mentioned, some people are scared to fail. Some people are scared of rejections. And then also, Denzel, I think with the process that the learning is very different, right? We always have to upgrade ourselves. Let me take two simple examples. Okay, now we are talking about the difference of this part of the world, the developed part of the world versus developing. Two simple examples: Sri Lanka versus US, let's say US and Europe. When I was doing O-levels, there was this optional subject called home science. Okay. Again, I went to a ladies' college. Obviously, we had home science. Maybe boys didn't have home science. You guys had something else, but there was home science. And I could remember even we were laughing at the girls who are taking that subject. Only 3 kids took that subject at the school. But now I'm in a different place. I have traveled around the world. I have exposed to different cuisines, cultures, and hospitality. There was no one at that time in Sri Lanka for us to tell, hey, look here, there's something called gastronomical arts capital in the world. That is Lyon, France. You go to France, you can go to, France or anywhere. You go to this school, you can come out as either Michelin star restaurant owner, or you can go and work for Michelin star restaurant, or you can become a food and beverage manager. And there's something called gastronomical arts, which we never knew, when we were doing O-levels and A-levels. And I wish if those kids knew that, that could have been the path for us to go. And then right now in Sri Lanka, the hospitality it's really big, right? We really want that sector. So that's why we don't have that exposure. And the other good example, and I think I mentioned you guys before we started the session, that I was in Sri Lanka in March. I was at 𝗪𝗵𝗁𝗪 surfing. I'm not a pro surfer. I can barely surf. So this surfing instructor was telling me, Miss, you are the only local. And there were about 2,000 surfers surfing in 𝗪𝗵𝗁. So how many of us can surf? And I'm asking from the audience as well. How many of us can surf? We are from an island. We are the islanders. We should be ideally taking part in Olympics. But we were told in our culture not to go to sea, not to take that risk. Don't die, don't go to sea or seas. It's not for us. So there's some problem in our system, because we were told not to take risk, always be safe, play safe. I think this is that dilemma that we had to break in. I
So I
this
think
is
what
the
you're talking of, yes, correct, very correct. Spot on, Kasuni, because it's the ecosystem that we have, or the supporting system, the infrastructure that you're talking of at the beginning, is that it's not created, or maybe it's not just there. Maybe we will be the generation that could or would create it, because the generations before us could not do it, because now you were born in this part of the world and you went to that part of the world where they own brands. The economies are so big. The biggest economy in the world today is the US economy. And they are the owners of brands. The manufacturing facilities are in this part of the world. So we keep manufacturing for them, for their brands. So they keep the premiums and they sell it. The little example that I can give is Apple. For example, Apple accounts for about 10% of the market share. But when it comes to the profitability of the sector, they have about 70% with that 10% market share. So, another example that I would like to cite here, connecting the two countries again, or rather two parts of the world. In 1876, Coca-Cola was launched, selling 9 bottles probably in that year. And in this around about the same time, we also launched something here, EGB. And our product is far better than Coca-Cola. But see where Coca-Cola today, see where we are. So it's not the product, it's the branding, the marketing, which we didn't get right, or for some reason. I think that's something. That's why I wanted to specifically ask you where you got that thought of creating a brand, because these are intangible assets that we create, which has humongous value. Coca-Cola, if you want to buy the company, it costs you to get that square red color patch, it costs you about $60 million. So there's a question for you. I'll also finish that off right now. As you told, we have to do different things and should be innovative. But in this pandemic situation, how can you bring your new products to the market? You can reach them by 100%. So probably the audience wants to know how you take your products out to the market. Pandemic has given you some, impediments. So how are you going to overcome them? Or what have you done?
Yeah, in 2020 was the year that we experienced the store closures, and everywhere was closed, and we didn't know how to sell the product. And I could remember it was a challenge not only for small businesses as well as bigger businesses as well. And I think that's where the e-commerce boom started, right? The e-commerce started picking up. Everyone started creating a website. And I could remember one of the things that I saw in this part of the world, that they were very responsive immediately, because they wanted to bring the business and the economy back. As you mentioned, that US being the largest consumer market, they're very entrepreneurial even in that way. So the Instagram came up with this, if you can remember that Instagram shop, where you can click for the product and go and purchase. It get connected to your e-commerce or website. So that was one of the things that I did as well. And at that time, even I could sell certain products through Instagram, because the followers, the community that you build, and they see the product. And when you say it's from Sri Lanka, or this is a good product, and this handmade lace involvements, handmade beetle lace from Sri Lanka, and then the lace weavers don't have any income at that time because there were no tourism. And when you become very transparent with your story, people would want to purchase. And I could remember people invest on durable product. If you can remember, when China reopened in 2020 or 2021, there's this Hermes brand. We know that most luxurious Hermes brand, which is Birkini, which cost you about million rupees, like $50,000 or something is like that. That could be like the least amount, the least price tag. And when Shanghai, they opened the store, when they got the shipment in, it was sold out within hours. Even during the pandemic, because people always will go for the quality. And your best promotion is word of mouth, your customer, because your customer will get the product and talk about it. So I think everyone came up with this idea of using the internet, something, and then obviously using the, I'm getting distraction from one of these participants, I don't know. So one of the things is that the use, are we okay?
Yeah, go ahead, continue.
Okay. So one of the things is that e-commerce, because e-commerce started accelerating, and right now also, I don't think these things will go back. During the pandemic, for sure, the e-commerce was the main source that I used. And then how you had to be different versus is nice to, have that transparency. As a creator, maybe you have to come and speak the truth. And a lot of brands did that.
So I think, thank you for that. And in line with what I asked before, there's a question. It says, Navin, what you know now, is there anything you would have done differently when you were first starting out? Marlon has asked this question. Marlon is actually, he's also an entrepreneur. He's in the industry of aviation ticketing. What do you find most challenging about being an entrepreneur? So again, double barrels, you can pick and choose and answer.
Okay, so being an entrepreneur, and when you say entrepreneurship, I think it's all about championing the uncertainty. So it's all about championing the uncertainty and championing the unknown. So that's the most important thing about this part of the world. As I mentioned about that surfing story, how many of us will champion the uncertainty? Now, the uncertainty is way beyond the risk, right? I mean, risk is something that you even get the insurance. But for uncertainty, you even won't get insurance, right? So this is something that most of the time the entrepreneurs are doing differently. And I could remember that when Dhanusha was saying that how he and his partner was started, and it's definitely they were championing the uncertainty. You didn't know what you guys were getting into, right? You could have a lot of problems. So in 1940s and 50s, now I'll take sports as example. We all like sports, no? So it's interesting, like 1940s and 50s in San Francisco Bay Area in California. When the surfers don't have waves, when they have flat waves, they wanted to do something. So they came up with the skateboards. Now skateboard is right now, it's a really big thing. It's a really big thing right now. There are about 8.9 million active skateboarders in the world. And as of 2020, it's about some $2 billion worth of industry. The skateboarding started picking up even during the pandemic because people started engaging in this lot of outdoor activities. So who would have thought, when you don't have waves and you want to create some sport, and then at that point, even in 1980s, 83s, and 86, that some of the kids here, like Tony Hawk is one of the pro skaters, if you can Google and find, and he's very popular here. He's called one of the oldest teenager, the youngest and oldest teenager. So they have started creating these tricks, and they have started building businesses out of the skateboard brands. It's really huge in US. So who would have thought, you go in this board which has 4 wheels and you are going to become entrepreneur? It's totally championing, it's totally championing the uncertainty, right?
Right.
Even leaking a video and creating these TikTok videos. Isn't it like championing the unknown? It is always. That is the mentality of this part of the world. So I think that's the mentality we need right now in Sri Lanka.
Very true, very true. I think it applies to our food culture as well. We have different cuisines in Sri Lanka, but I think Sri Lankan food is unique, and I'm sure everyone would like to try it. But as you said, it's about surfing. Same applies to food as well. Our people think that what we eat is not good enough. It is. Having been around the world, you would know that for sure. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do, minute things which can make a huge difference. I think that's very important. Now, for example, Post-it note, for that matter, it's a innovation of 3M. It was a mistake. The glue that they wanted to find out, they could not find. They could not invent that glue, and they could see that when they stick it, they can take it back and paste it back. So they launched a product called Post-it note. So that's I think they call it the culture of celebrating failures. But in countries like ours, even if somebody comes up with the best of the best product, still people would say, okay, you are mad, it's not going to work. So I think that's where what you said matters, championing the uncertainty and, sticking to what you believe in and working towards it so that, you're going to get the results. So I think very important point. So Marlon, I think we have answered the question. Thank you for that. Okay. Now, Dhanush, I hope you are here.
I am.
Okay. I would pose the same question at you. You would have done 100 things, and probably all 100 would have worked, and maybe 10 wouldn't have not worked for you. So, would you like to talk about it? If you like, you can.
Of course. So, especially in the tech world, whatever that you talk, whatever that you offer needs to be relevant, right? You can't. You can, of course, you can try irrelevant things, but it won't attract customers, right? So, if I answer that question, as an entrepreneur, also one of my pet topics is innovation. I spend more time there. I spend more time in terms of looking out like what's going to be relevant next. And that keeps me going. And if I don't do that, I know that I'll have a lot of people catching up to what I do, and you can't always keep those point of differentiations. You need to be creative. When I say creative, you need to always check the relevance, validity, and if you're failing, you need to fail fast. You can't be holding on to something too long, because it risks the entire ecosystem that you have built if you do that. And it might risk your entire business or something that you have set up. So you need to understand, you need to keep on trying new things. And also you need to always continue to seek relevance of it. If it is going out of relevance, then you need to also make sure that where's the next idea? And you also need to make sure that that's in line with whatever you want to achieve with your product or the service. You can't do 101 things, right? Because otherwise it takes a lot of focus away from you, and you need to be very focused. So there are things that we didn't do well, but we decided to abandon some of the things, some of the ideas that we had. And because sometimes we have ideas, but it's not the right timing, right? Because we are working with clients, right? So from country to country, because we are a global organization, so we see that sometimes a topic here may not be relevant in another country because of their maturity and where they are in terms of adoption cycle, right? Because when it comes to technology, it's all about where is a particular market in the adoption cycle, right? Is it an upward trend? It's a downward trend, or whether it's at the peak. So is it the right time to enter? And then how you would do that, or how you want to price it, how you want to reach out to clients, what's your channel of reaching out to a client. So there are a lot of complex things behind that, right? You may have an idea, but you need to put in a lot of good time and effort in terms of doing all that while the operation is running, right? So I've been in the dilemma of strategy and operation, where sometimes operation demands most of my time. So then I lose the strategic focus, and then that affects the organization. And then you need to be always have that consciousness with you, saying that, you're here, you need to move back. You can't be here. Right. So that's why you need to build that ecosystem of people that whom you can depend. So you could actually, you need to, delegate these tasks, and you need to create that layer of dependency, right? Dependability, I would say, right? And there, those are some of the learnings that I had, because setting up, Kausini would agree with me, setting up a local business to setting up a global business is completely too different, because we talk about timelines, we talk about different cultures, we talk about even how you would talk to a client, right? So classic example in Sri Lanka, if people walk into a meeting, now we have a lot of e-meetings, how many people switch on their camera, right? Now I have clients, if you don't switch on your camera, they get offended, they get offended. They really get pissed, right? So if you walk into a client meeting and if you don't switch on your camera, if you don't have a very good reason to do so, you lose your client, right? So some of these things we need to understand, right? So it's very contextual, it's very cultural, and these things you need to keep an eye on. So if you ask me, there are a lot of things that has to happen in terms of education, training, awareness, when you handle a lot of people, how you do that, right? So it demands a lot of operational involvement. So a lot of things I've tried a lot of things, right? And if you see, the success rate is actually higher than the failure rate, of course, otherwise we will not be able to grow a business globally, right? And also you need to bring in, careful thinking, and that is very important, and setting up that culture internally, it's very important, and creating that, safe environment for people to have, problem solving, for them to do problem solving, because I can't be doing all the problem solving in projects, right? Every project, like if you take organization, we are talking about multiple parallel projects, right? So there are parallel projects running at the same time. So you can't be spreading yourself, too much. So there are things that works out well, there are things that doesn't work out well. But the most important thing is, if something's not working out well, you need to stop doing that, and you need to find ways of improving and doing that. So if you need to fail fast, right? And you need to also try. You can't just wait without trying anything, right? The classic example is Michael Jordan. What we have seen is the number of the goals that he is, scored, but we've not seen the things that he has failed, right? So, and he talks about it, how many times he, does his practice to all that. So, and in terms of even ideas, right? There are ideas that we have tried out and which not succeeded. There are ideas that, that have been successful. So that is also there. But failing fast is something very important for entrepreneurs. You can't hold on to a lot of things for a long time. So that's the kind of thing that I have experienced during my time, for the last 5 years now, running this and expanding this. And of course, learning. I think you need to be very conscious about when you meet people, when you work with different cultures, different countries, and you need to be very conscious about it, right? What people like, what people don't like, right? So, and that gives that quality aspect of conversation, that gives that whole customer orientation, I would say, right? So, we should never be myopic about that. So we need to be very inclusive, the way that we handle those, right? So I also want to touch a few things about the ecosystem. I think probably later we can touch that, right? Because some of the other things that we are talking about also relates to even this cultural aspect, also as part of an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And there are two things I would like to talk about: the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and also why it is important, and also this whole difference between innovation, creativity, and also entrepreneurship, right? So those things, those are two different things, right? But of course they go hand in hand, but it's not the same. So I think if you can give me a little bit of time later on to explain that, something that actually I studied extensively during my, I did something with Oxford, so at University of Oxford. So in that program, something that we really, drill down and how to understand in terms of creating value and capturing value. It's two different, and I'll explain that with few examples for some of these budding entrepreneurs, that creativity is not entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is not creativity, and you both needs both.
Thank you. So I think cultural sensitivity, no doubt, if you work across the borders, you need to have it, because in certain cultures, the way you do things and how you put across things are different to the others. So yeah, that's a very important point. And I don't know whether most of the entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka would know these things, because there is no, as you said, throughout, there is no ecosystem which can help them, support them to get this knowledge. So there is a knowledge gap, and there is attitude gap, and there is also some sort of I would say what's the right word? we don't have that desire to, think beyond, because we have this islander mentality mostly, and we think whatever that happens here, as you said, like 20 million people coming out of universities in India is equivalent to the amount of people we have in this island. So either way, now next again, Kasuni, your turn. I'm asking this from you because you wanna, sit in different land. What are the main differences that you see between local entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs that you see there? Is it only the exposure that they have you see as a difference, or are there anything else that so you can talk of both goods and bads, ups and downs, comparing the two ends?
Well, definitely the exposure is the key. And we are from a third world developing country, and we have lack of resources. Sometimes we don't have that expertise. So that's something that we have to understand. The thing is, in Sri Lanka, we are all knowledgeable, right? If we take our literacy rates and all, we are way above. And perhaps that's also works negatively, because when you know things, a lot of things, you don't like to accept, you have this ego because you think that you know everything. And I think that's really works against the entrepreneurship, I feel like. You have to be kind of, open-minded and to accept the fact that, okay, we need a team, we need to get expertise, go for collaborations. So all those things, I think exposure is one of the most important things that we have to really build and accept it. Okay, we have this issue, we had lack of exposure, now we have to go and gain the exposure. Just simple examples, like let's say a graduate in American graduate versus Sri Lankan graduate. There are so many Fortune 500 companies in this part of the world, or they can go and get an internship at any point, any time. But if you are in Sri Lanka, then how many, exposures, like how many internships that you can apply for, because it's a small market. And also, like, let's say, in relevant to creative industries, if you want to go and gain some inspiration, like some sort of art inspiration, like how many museums, art exhibitions, galleries we have in Sri Lanka? It's very limited. But in a country like this, you always see that artists are facilitated, the best museums, art galleries in this part of the world. And also that the mindset of that people don't like to fail. That is a very big thing in Sri Lanka. No, I mean, we don't like to fail. We don't like to get rejected, and everything is a kind of a taboo in our system. You are getting fired. I mean, obviously, if you get hired, there's a possibility of getting fired, and that's perfectly fine in a job, in anything. And going and working, doing a side hustle also, it's not something very common in Sri Lanka, right? But here it's perfectly fine. While you are at university, whether you are in MIT, Harvard, or Columbia, you can go and work for McDonald's as a shift, which is perfectly fine, and no one will laugh at you. And that it's accepted. We don't go and laugh at anyone who's working in the service sector or hospitality sector. But let's say, Denzel, you wanted to do a side hustle and you go and work for Pizza Hut for a couple of hours, it will be a big problem, right? I mean, it's a big problem, but if you are here, it's not a problem. And I was saying, like, why not? I go and help my friend's coffee shop, and, I can learn to become a barista and help. It's perfectly fine here. Doesn't matter whether you did a job in corporates or not, or that. I think those are the main differences in this part of the world. So people are very open-minded, and they take risks. They are willing to take failures, accept the rejections. That the shame works very differently. We believe shame is in a very different way. That is very impactful to build a country, especially when you want to create entrepreneurs.
I think we had the caste system, and caste became class, and there we had, from the beginning, first class. Which class you belong to doesn't matter. All the classes are working hard to, making a living out of it. So each one is respected equally. But here, in addition to what you do, your parents, grandparents, all those things matter. So my question to you is now, probably this is about breaking the barriers now. As a female, lady, a girl, mother, I don't know. When you become an entrepreneur, how it affects you? I know in your context, it's not a problem because it's accepted very well. But in Sri Lankan context, you have certain taboos, as you said, or certain psyches that people have, how that affects you, or what
Well,
you have come across.
Well, yeah, that's a very important question because we are in 2022 right now, and this women's movement, equal rights, Black Lives Matter. I know Black Lives Matter it's very a North American movement, but then 40+ countries join because it's about equality, representation. So the women's movement is very important. The women's movement is a winning movement, and LGBTQ rights and everything. So women's movement is winning movement. Why I said that was, if you look at Women's March in Washington, D.C. or New York or in Europe, you'll see a lot of males are joining, like male representation. And that is the important aspect of the women's movement, because if they understand, and then we are in the right direction. And I could remember like a long time ago when I joined factory to do before I came here, came to New York, that I had to work there, here and there. So I could remember I was in a board meeting, small boardroom meeting, so many male representation, all the managers, and then myself, and the design team is newly set up. Everyone's rolling their eyes and eyebrows. Why do we need a design team? Why do we need a new product development team? Because this is a manufacturing hub. And I could remember that whenever we come up with ideas, I experienced this eyebrow raising. Oh, wow, she also can come up with ideas. And I experienced that. And I wasn't offended and I didn't become a victim. I started keep on doing that. Once you convince, okay, she also equally capable of coming up with an idea and doing her job, everyone else accept, there's no barrier as such. And I think that is something we have to train right now, especially our new generation, the Gen Z and the Alpha generation. Also right now, the millennials kids are going to be Alpha. So it's very important to teach our kids right now, it's equal. I mean, some of the females, those who are CEOs and directors, they earn more money than men. It's perfectly fine. And it's just that gender is something that we have to accept it in a very sensitive way. This is a very sensitive topic. I mean, we are being, as a culture, I think the Buddhist background and everything that we have, that we were told to respect people in a certain way. But even in this part of the world, New York City is very different. It is the most diversified place. But if you go to the real America, and then Americans call it white America or Trump's America, you will see the discrimination. And the church is not accepting same-sex marriages, LGBTQ rights. So all those things are impacting this women's right as well. I mean, it's a very good question that you asked, Denzel, because it's very difficult to come out of that mindset, So it's something of a process that we have to take through. And I think the starting is at your home base to educate your kids. Your brother or sister also can do equal things just like you are. It's not like, sometimes even mothers favor sons and not the daughters favored by father and things like that. I mean, it's not like that. Those are the things actually impacting in the corporate level as well. And I have experienced that, but I have never become a victim. But I have seen that if you are capable of doing your job, people will respect you. It'll take some time. Things are changing for a better world, for sure.
Yes, you're muted. Okay.
In entrepreneurship, we keep talking of, I think you both would remember S-curves, which keep us going. How do you apply it in your context? The S-curves, I think yours is it's a continuous flow of S-curves because you keep, developing one after the other new concepts. But Dhanushi, in your context, because you set something up and it's a package and you sell it, and then you keep servicing it for your clients. So, how much emphasis, how much effort that you take over innovation aspect of it, in your part of the business?
Good question. Yes, so in technology, if you specifically look at technology S-curves, right? So it's an S-curve. So it actually starts at an idea and it moves up and it have a good momentum and it start dying, right? Because you have a lot of other technologies, catching up, also coming up with substitutes and all that. So what we are looking at is, especially in technology business, that what we are in, it has become easier to innovate compared to what we had, because more of like platforms that we have. So if you take creating new things on top of platforms has made things easier. I mean, like now those days when I first started studying engineering, we had to code almost everything, right? And then became the object-oriented world where, we talk about objects, we could build things faster, right? And then here comes, but even though we built things faster, we had other constraints and challenges when it comes to deploying this technology. We had to have hardware resources and all that. Here comes cloud, right? So you have platforms now available for you to, create things faster. Classic example, if an organization wants to adopt new technology from a month down the line, also from tomorrow, just imagine even today, you could actually go online, subscribe to a software as a service and start using it immediately. Gone are the days that you have to go and buy something, install binaries in a machine. Sorry, we're using tech words, but it's not there because all these platforms are around you, and a lot of technology. You have access to a lot of technology because of the software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. There are a lot of things around you. So what you could do is, instead of focusing on how you do that, you can actually focus on what you want to do and the product and solving the problem, right? Those days to solve the problem, there are common underground technological infrastructure, other things also you need to set up with the solution. But now you don't have to spend time there. You have to just focus on the business problem. So it's all about leveraging what's around you, right? Because and I see that it's more than ever before, it's easy for anyone now to use technology, leverage technology to solve a problem. But it's the creativity comes where how you want to leverage the technology, right? So that's where the winning game is. And that's where you need this cognitive capability, the experience, the understanding of how to use the technology to come up with a better product. So what we do is to answer that question. So we can actually create multiple S-curves. So what's happening is the duration of S-curve is shrinking now. As Kasuni also said, sometimes by the time the product hits the market, it's obsolete, right? So they always need to, they're producing something which someone will buy from an outlet 6 months down the line, and where it's still, that design will be relevant in 6 months, right? So same thing applies here. Now, I would say 15 years back, whatever the technology that's used in US, it took about 6 months for us to get it. But now it's almost available at the same time, right? So we have access to it, right? Especially if you talk about software and services. Right? So world is, I think, become, because of this accessibility conversation, because of this platform, availability of platforms, because we have things available to us more of a subscription rather than infrastructure and all that. So I think from a creativity aspect related to a S-curve, I think we are in a better position, right? I saw this one question in terms of someone asked from CAS that how do we, because of the pandemic and all that, how do we get into a market, right? Yeah. Now, I'll tell you, then since of COVID, right? Since of COVID, all our projects, maybe US, maybe in Australia, maybe in Canada, all projects have been delivered completely 100% remote, right? We never had to fly down a consultant to do that project. We've done it completely remote, right? So challenges, answers, leverage tech, right? So getting back to the whole conversation of value creation and value capturing, right? So if you really look at these two words, creating value and capturing value are two different things. If you take Kodak, if you go back, Kodak was part of building the digital camera. But if you talk about Kodak digital camera, like what? Right? So value creation is creating that camera or that IP. Capturing is commercializing it, capturing value out of that. Right? So you can't be an entrepreneur if you don't capture value. If you just create something, you are an inventor. So you do it for the first time, you have an IP, you are an inventor. You invent something. But just because you invent something doesn't mean that the masses will use it. You need to commercialize it, you need to take it to markets, you need to bring it to life, right? So that is that process of entrepreneurship, right? And even innovators, what innovators do is we have existing inventions, we take them, we collate it, we build things, put these things together, we create something new from what we have, right? Those are the innovators, right? So they use of it. So they capture value, right? So this creating and capturing value is important, and you need to be very cognizant about what's going on, what's available to you, what platform, what services, and leverage those is also a skill of an entrepreneur, right? Otherwise, you will have the best idea, but you will never be able to take it out there and even communicate it to someone, probably even show it to someone, right? So I hope I answered your question. Kas, you can add anything you want to add.
I have a question for you. But yeah, first person, yes.
No, I absolutely agree with you. That's a good one, Dhanush. It's a good one.
So there's a question for you. Ma'am, how did you raise your capital funding?
For me, this question for me, right? Okay. So it's initially started with there was a funding or investment as such. It's like, it went out from my pocket. I think I had about like less than $200 those days, like 25,000 rupees or something that I started. But one of the things that I did was like, when at that point, I realized that it's the idea which worked, and also the network is very important, especially in any industry. If you have the right network, you can get a lot of support, and you can get done a lot of things kind of without paying money, especially in the fashion industry. Even right now that, let's say you have really good contacts. I'm just saying these things. Let's say Kim Kardashian or like the family, and sending a gift let's say sending a gift of a clothing and asking them to wear whenever they can would create huge impression in internet. If you have that network as an example. So likewise, that's how I started. But right now I'm in the process of, I have to go for a investment. So we are looking for some venture capitalists, angel investors, just want to go to next steps. And even that, it's very important, prepare your idea in a proposal, maybe a couple of slides, presentation, and put together. But the most important thing, even to approach the right people that you need to build the network. So network is very important.
I think you brought a real big point here. See, the question is more on the financial capital.
Yeah.
You're talking of social capital.
Yeah.
Which is a vital element in today's world, because as you rightly said, if you know the right people, if your network is bigger, and if they have regards for you, they do things FOC. Because they know in return, they're going to get something bigger from you. Even if they don't expect that, you can get the help from people who are like really big. They really don't mind. Somebody coming up, I think that's an interesting thing. So to answer this question, the capital is not just finance. It's also the social capital that you have. Social capital is something that it's not something that you're born with. Sometimes you could be born with it, like, you are in a certain class in the society, you are born in social capital, but you can build it. And an interesting thing that is coming up now is most of the people say that how we can run businesses without any capital. They're not even talking of angel investors. They're not talking of venture capitalists. They're just saying, okay, we can make massive profits without investing a single dollar or rupee. So what they're saying is basically maybe becoming a lobbyist. You lobby certain things to certain people and you create a opportunity which was not there before. And because the opportunity is so huge that there is a person already willing to come and, put their funds behind. So all it needs is a thought. And then how you get that thought is the challenge. Rather, it's the most interesting thing that you can think of. So I think someone who wants to put entrepreneurship into practice, of course, capital is required for certain categories of businesses. But if you want to really think big and come up with something really totally different, which is totally out of the box, I think it's still possible. Like how the taxi services started without a single taxi, and how all the hotel chains, like started without a single hotel in their portfolio. They run the largest hotel chain in the world, and they don't have a single hotel in their books. So I think that's the latest trend in the world, and also how many people make businesses out of social charitable projects, like how we learned about 𝗪𝗵𝘁𝗧𝗪𝗧 hospital in India, how that person started doing free cataract surgeries to poor Indians in village areas. And then later it got really big because people started putting funds behind it. And then today, he's the largest manufacturer of the lenses, because for him to perform cataract surgeries, he needs lenses. So he's the largest. It's the largest business in the world in terms of manufacturing lenses. So initial thought was different. So I think these are the interesting points that we need to pick from the world and apply in our context and bring about that change. So I would ask this question from Kasumi. The entrepreneurial mindset, I think we were talking more or less about this on and off. If I may ask this question like this, you think they are born or they are made?
I don't think anyone is born to do anything. That's how I say it. Okay, I don't think anyone is born to do anything. It's something that through the process it happens. Like, I have heard a lot of stories where people say, oh, it was accident, I accidentally got into this and that. And also they find the passion. It could be even sports, but the sports that you engage in, or like the food that we like to eat. Things changed over the years and the processes. Like say Steve Jobs. I don't think he ever thought about it, but most of us know his story, but he was an adopted kid, someone who was born to someone else. I don't think that people are born to do things like that. And some people who raised and born somewhere else get adapted to different cultures and cities. They do amazing things. So I don't think I did science because my background as my parents, I had very typical Sri Lankan parents who told you to, do science. So I did science, and at some point I felt like it's kind of a dropout from bioscience, then I went to design school. And that was a kind of a disappointment at my house at that time, moving science to arts. And then I found my passion, and I'm very happy today. I don't have to work.
Which means you're born with it, not made.
I don't think I was born with it. It's how do you say I was born with it? Because I didn't even know at that time to become a fashion designer is a big thing. Maybe the creativity is yes, that your taste. This is the other thing. Like ultimately, everything comes down to the taste. So if you have a good taste, you will always have that taste in whatever you do. So perhaps we all have that taste. We have that because style changes, right? You travel around the world and it could change. So born with it I don't believe in that, because I have seen people are doing very different things in different phases of their life. Yeah. So that's my opinion. Okay.
Interesting. Dhanusha, before we wind up, tell me now your business, I consider it as a small and medium scale business, not a large scale business. Dhanusha. When you take the statistics of Sri Lanka, as far as I know, 90% of the businesses are entrepreneur energy-based businesses, and they are contributing towards the development of the society, employment opportunities, etc. So, how do you analyze this in Sri Lankan context, and what do you think we can do differently?
It's a timely conversation. Actually, I think as a country we would have thought about it a decade or two ago. Unfortunately, if you take what can help us solve the current problems, right? We come out of that. If my answer is SME sector has the bigger role to play. But in the current context, SME sector is getting, there have been a lot of challenges, right? So I'll quickly talk about areas that's actually affecting an entrepreneurial ecosystem, because SMEs are thriving out of an entrepreneurial ecosystem. Right? So it can be a small shop, it can be bakery, it can be anything that you do, right? Probably mining business, right? But ideally, an entrepreneurial ecosystem should have these elements, right? I have listed it down, right? So number one is like, of course, market accessibility. So you need to have access to your market, right? So we need to find a way in terms of what are the SMEs that we have, in what industries or sectors that we have, and how we are going to actually open them markets. Because no point if we don't, they create something, they have ideas, they either have a product or a service, and the biggest challenge that I see lies in these areas. So when I first I'll go through the list, and then you realize that the level of education, right, inconsistency in terms of understanding how these things work in an SME market is actually the bigger challenge that we have. A lot of people who want to start a business, who would start a business, who probably already running a business, but how you're going to grow, how you're going to sustain, right, and also how you're going to start contributing is the challenge. So if you look at market access, human capital, funding, right, and then of course the support part of it, mentoring, and having access to even sessions like this, hearing from people, and even we could hear from people who've been successful. It's not only us who should be talking, right? So and then of course the government part of involvement, the regulatory aspect of it, education around it, and also universities' role, right? Universities' role in every entrepreneurial ecosystem, you have universities playing a major role in terms of research and development. Right? And then that's something that we really lack in our university ecosystem. Right? What we make is basically people with degrees. I'm not saying anything bad, but take it very constructively. We create people with a lot of knowledge, but when it comes to applying it, practically creating something with what is a bigger challenge. So, but because we've not, structured their minds and given them that exposure in terms of how you do something in a creative manner, right? So that role. And then, of course, the cultural support. It's very important, right? So these 8 elements play a major role in helping us growing and thriving in this SME sector. Now, when you go through that 8 things, you pick any SME in your area, apply these 8 things, and look at what they actually don't have, right? Now, if you look at, that's why if you go to Silicon Valley, now, in a study, right? So it's a World Economic Forum study that is done about I think about 5 years ago. That's why the benchmark for entrepreneurial ecosystems is Silicon Valley. Why? Because availability of these things is about 90%. So they tick a lot of things there, right? And if I go with my idea there, I have access to funds. I have access to not just fund investors. I have access to strategic investors. I have universities. There are labs. There are incubators that I can take my idea and launch my idea. There's a lot of things there, right? So that whole ecosystem is what I'm talking about, and we don't have that. Classic example: Sri Lanka doesn't have a development bank. We're talking about growth of SME sector, right? Remember, National Development Bank is a fully licensed commercial bank, even though they have NDB. NDB is not a development bank. NDB is a commercial bank. So where is that orientation? We have little lenders like Saransa and all that giving lending, but how can you grow with that kind of funding to bring an SME up to an exporter level, a business? So these are the challenges we have, right? So we lack development banking, we lack funding, we lack VCs and all that. It's only we have only tech sector is attracting VCs. Very less investors coming into other sectors, right? Now, these are some of the challenges that we have. So to answer your question, SME sector can make or break what we are doing here in this country, right? I think they have a bigger role, right? Because few large players can't grow this economy to that level. We need to bring sustainability into this equation. One of the big players just decide to relocate their factory from Sri Lanka to Mexico. What will happen? You will have 300,000 people jobless tomorrow, right? SME sector is not like that. You have multiple businesses. As you said, 90% of our businesses are SME. But the problem is that the support ecosystem does not exist for this, to support the growth of SME sector. I think that's where we need to start focusing on. And what we can do is the part of sharing, understanding, share of experiences, so they don't have to do the same mistakes that we did, right? In growing a business, establishing in Sri Lanka, then growing it outside globally, going into different markets, right? So today I'm happy to tell that, 5 years ago we started. Today I have clients in 10 countries, right? So, and it's not an easy thing to do, right? And it's not just 10 countries in this region, but we're talking about developed countries. We're talking about, we have Fortune 500, companies in our client here, right? So how do we break into a Fortune 500 company and, do a project? So these are tough ones, but I don't see that support coming. I think it's time that we have a university supporting entrepreneurial ecosystem. We have other components of this entrepreneurial ecosystem coming. At least if we look at Silicon Valley as a benchmark, what can we do? India doing it. India creating that entrepreneurial ecosystem there. And that's why if you ask the first question, if an Indian has an idea, they can bring it to light faster than a Sri Lankan having an idea, right? So that's why probably some people go with the idea and relocate and they build the idea outside, right? So why? Because like the ecosystem that we have. I hope I did justice to your question. And if I
Very correct. Very correct. I think again we came back to the question asked from Kasumi on financial capital. You brought up the point NDB and EFCC both were supposed to be development banks in Sri Lanka, but fortunately, unfortunately, it was a recommendation I think given by IMF at that point of time. That was one of the reasons why some people said that, if you go to IMF, it can create certain unnecessary uncertainties in the system. I think listening to you, what came to my mind was that government also has a bigger role to play. Not in terms of, establishing ministries for primary industries or, that kind of things. I think we need a ministry which can take up the whole branding aspect of it, packaging, labeling, finding markets for these manufacturers, because SME sector we expect now, you are also in the SME sector, but at the same time, a person, maybe an artisan who works in a faraway area is also in the SME sector. So we expect both to perform in the same way. Now you can go to countries, explore opportunities, but that person will not be in the same footing to do that. So that's where there has to be some kind of a center or an institution which can support these people. And that's something that I think that's a very important point that we can highlight. Maybe you, me, or anyone else in the forum can do that. So thank you, Dinesh. And is there any one last advice that you would like to share with budding or upcoming or aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so my thoughts, like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should tell yourself, you can't be giving up, right? It's because if you may fail and you can't give up. You need to stand up and you need to run. You need to stand up and you need to run. So you need to have that persuasion in terms of that, I'm going to do this. right? And one of the things that also probably I will take, this is a personal experience. So when you're a CEO, when you build your business, and you may not have a lot of people around you energizing you, right? You only have like few people around you who like encourage you to do this, right? So if you depend on others to encourage you, entrepreneurship is not something for you, right? You need to have this self-motivating engine inside you, right? And that's what keeps you going. And it's like a light here, right? You need to light up yourself. So that's actually, now if you don't have that, first you need to think about it. You need to have that, because when you're down, there's, except for a few people around you, you will need a lot of support for you to, stand up. Entrepreneurs fall every day, every month. They challenge, they go through a lot of challenges, right? So, and if you're not ready for that, it's not, entrepreneurship is not for you, right? I'm being very upfront because I don't want anyone to screw things, right? So, but if you think you can, you get up and you fall, you stand up and you try, right? And you never give up, right? And that's one of the most important qualities that you need to have, right? Because there are many times that customers will reject you, right? And you never give up, right? And we during our entrepreneurship program, there are many people who came and talked about how 10 years that they tried to enter a certain client, right? Prototype after prototype, and now they're running big operations, in Colombo, right? So that persuasion, that never give up attitude is very important. And also, anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur need to have basic set of understanding, knowledge with them. It's very important, right? Appreciate the role of finance in your business. Appreciate the role of strategic human resources in your business, right? Appreciate the role of marketing in your business, right? Because I'm just an engineer, if I just have an idea, I think my engineering skills would take me, there. It's not going to happen, because you need to use all that. So you need to spend time. If you don't know understanding, talk to people who has, excel, in that, get those ideas. You need to keep an eye that it's not just one thing, but there are multiple moving components when you're an entrepreneur, things around you, right? So if you can keep an eye on those, and, if you have the rest of the things that I just mentioned, right? I think, that will be a winning combination, right? But of course, it's a self-learning conversation. Every day you learn something new. And I will not be able to tell that, right? Because I can tell things that I've gone through, but it will be unique situations that people will face, right? But that light is important, right? You need to have that self-motivation to do something, and you should never give up. So those are my,
Thank you, Darshan. Thank you. Before getting to concluding thoughts, Kasuni, I would like to ask this particular question. Uma Murad wants to know from you, what advice would you give to someone just starting a business?
Okay, so well, I don't know his business, but I can tell something generally. It may not be an advice. I think Dhanusha covered most of the things that perhaps that's very important. So for Murad, right? So if he's listening, this is something that I can tell. Let me take an example. I think this would be something interesting for all of us. There are doorknobs. Doorknob is something that is not very noticeable, right? We use that every day. But think for a moment, when doorknob breaks at home, we want to immediately replace that, no matter what. And that's something which is not noticeable at all, but it becomes the most important thing at that point. And if you really think about it, that doorknob is something very simple. If you really think about it, someone has designed that doorknob. Doorknob also a design. So likewise, most of the things around us are designed. So the creativity is important, and also someone has really marketed that and placed that. So as Dhanusha mentioned that, entrepreneurship and creativity, these two things has to come together. So I think perhaps that would be one of the good ways to look at things. Doesn't matter you are the most amazing artist, amazing creator, you have this breakthrough crazy idea, but then you have to really go and commercialize it in today's world. So that's where the entrepreneurship comes, and that's where you take the risk, where you push the boundaries and all. So all those things goes hand in hand. except life and the nature, I think most of the things as the smartest species on this planet we have created, right? That's why we have this life. That's why we are the smartest creatures in this world, like softwares to tangible things to everything. I mean, we are connecting like this, being in remote areas. So the creativity is very important as entrepreneurs, because I'm coming from that product creator background. And as Dhanusha explains, all those things, qualities are important. You know, you just have to do it. You just have to go for it. You know, just like Nike, Dhanusha is promoting Nike so much. Yes. You know, it just you have to just do it. It's all right to fail. It's all right to get rejected. But you know, it's the most important thing is you learn and you apply and you move forward, and be very, very open-minded. You know, we are in 2020 and people are planning to go to Mars, and that's where the world is going towards.
Interesting. So I think the question was particularly about I would say how to start a business, and you concluded it with your final thoughts and ideas as well, or concluding remarks as well, or is there anything else that you would like to add, Kasumi?
Well, not really. I think that perhaps perhaps my point of view. I don't like to call it an advice, because I cannot really advise someone. You know, I mean, without really knowing the exact context. But
Okay,
I think the point of view is important. You know, and the experience and the experience that we went through. Yeah.
Okay, so all in all, I think we have come to the conclusion, the end of the discussion that we had with these two wonderful personalities who came up with a lot of thoughts, ideas, and probably I would say insights about the topic of entrepreneurship and what entrepreneurs do differently. I think we heard a lot from them, and I'm sure that it's going to be helpful to those who want to study this and those who want to put into practice. I think, as Kasumi said, it's more about putting into practice than gathering letters behind your name. So I'm sure we are not discouraging you to follow, you know, particular courses which are offered by AIBS, in case, you know, if you think that way. But it's about choosing the right one. You know, what can really take me to where I want to be, or what I want to be. It's not just, you know, following. We have seen people following, okay, I want to do law, and then I want to do finance and marketing and HR. You know, it's not that. I think it's about following your true passion and collecting things which matter in the journey of following your passion. So I think with that, we'll wind up. I'll hand it over to AIBS. Thank you, Kasumi and Dhanusha, for your wonderful contribution. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us, Denzel. And
great. Right. So we have now come to an end of a very insightful evening, and I have no doubt you all have inspired with the ideas our resourceful panel have discussed. And at least one of you now may want to become an entrepreneur. That's the objective or the target of the entire session. And first of all, I would like to thank the two panelists we had today, Mr. Dhanusha Muthukumarana, Managing Director, CEO of Potenza APAC, and Ms. Kasumi Ratnasurya, Product Director of 𝗪𝗏. Thank you, Dhanusha and Kasumi, for joining with us to inspire our AIBS students as well as all the participants today. And also, we couldn't have done this program session today without a person's support, and that person is none other than Mr. Denzel Pereira. So thank you, Mr. Denzel, for your immense support starting from the beginning, and also for your unfailing advices. And I would like to conclude this session thanking all the participants who have joined with us today. I know most of you might have had power cuts after 4:20, unfortunately, but still you guys kept going on. And please be in touch with the AIBS for sessions like this in the future. And I've seen that some of you have asked the question in the chat box whether you will get the recording of the session. Yes, all of you will be receiving the recording of the today's session if you have missed any part of it. And later on the day, you can check it in 𝗪𝗵𝘁 YouTube page as well. So thank you once again for everyone who joined this afternoon. And I hope you all have grabbed something that would change your life in the coming future. So thank you all once again, and good night. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denzel. Thanks, Kasuni. Thanks, Dhanusha.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.